Water. Water is vitally important to us all. Yet it is something that most of us take for granted, because with modern indoor plumbing, with the push of the button, we can have water just like that, and even hot water just like that. But that hasn't been the case for most of our history, nor the case for even some places around the world today. A lot of the times, people had to go to a location, gather the water, and then transport it, oftentimes by foot, and with just carrying it to wherever they needed it for themselves and their homes or for their animals. And with farming and homesteading, water is extremely important for our plants, our trees, and even the animals that we raise. Recently, I had the opportunity to spend some time at Polyface Farm in Swope, Virginia, the farm of Joel Salatin and his family and team there. And while we were there, one of the videos we were working with the broiler chickens that they have. And I was amazed at how much pressure of water they were able to pump up the side of the mountain to provide water for their broilers. And I was so amazed that I was like, wow, I really want to know how they do it. And if you missed that video, make sure you go back and check it out. As well as, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And also click the notification bell there to receive notifications each time we release a new video. And I have a goal. I really would like to reach 100,000 subscribers. Please help me. So feel free to share any of the videos that I do with any of your friends or co-workers or whatever. Just share them. But in this video, we spent some time with Joel, and he shared with us one-on-one how his watering system waters the gardens, as well as provides water throughout the farm for their animals. As we were heading up the mountain with Joel, we weren't going as fast as it looks like we're going here, but it was a pretty bumpy ride. And I must admit, we really enjoyed spending time with Joel. And it's so neat to see how much of a passionate and loving person he is, and how much he cares about people, about animals, about life, and about the earth and the environment as well. Joel told us that at Polyface they have about 15 ponds total. And as we were traveling up the mountain, you could see in certain areas where they had it terraced out, where they would have a pond. And Joel brought us to one of their newer ponds, and here's where he explained a number of the systems and techniques that he uses and how the system works. Feels so good to take a deep breath here.
Oh yeah.
So did you dig this pond here?
We sure did. Not with shovels. But so water, you know, you can't do anything without water. Water's the beginning of life. And a lot of people don't realize that that 600 years ago, North America was 8% water.
Wow.
Today we're maybe 1% water. Where'd all that water come from? What was it? It was beaver ponds. There were 200 million beavers. We now know from excavation archaeology that some of these beavers were the size of a Volkswagen automobile. Big beavers, big beavers. Well, we don't have the beavers anymore, at least not in that kind of quantity. We don't have the water, but what we can do is permaculture style. We can actually, with excavation equipment, build high ponds in valleys. And unlike beavers, we can build ponds where, you know, there's not a stream. And so this is not a stream, it's just a valley, it's just a, you know, a catchment, if you will. And so in a snow melt or a rain event, we can catch that flood water and hold it high on the landscape. And so this water, this pond right here, we have 8 miles of water line.
Wow.
That's feeding the farm down there. Gravity, no pumps, no electricity, gravity feeding the whole everything down there. So this is one of the things that, you know, that a lot of visitors don't see. You know, they just think of us as livestock, but if you're going to have livestock, you know, you got to get water to them. So here's the thing: a pond The best water is from 16 inches under the surface. So that floaty out there, it's just a gas can, that floaty is hooked to an intake strainer, and on the bottom of it is a piece of metal. So the metal holds the strainer down, the floaty holds the strainer up, and so you can suspend this intake strainer at 16 inches under the surface. If you pull water off the surface, you get a lot of, you know, twigs and leaves and bug legs and all that stuff. If you pull it off the bottom, it's kind of anaerobic and funky. So 16 inches is the best water. So the floaty and the piece of steel on the intake allow that to float and stay at 16 inches under the surface level at all times, so you get the cleanest, nicest water.
Ah. And this is probably one of the most important features of your operation here.
It is. It absolutely is, because you can't move animals around unless you have portable water, and so this is the beginning of it. Now that intake pipe then goes down under the dam. So that when you're building a dam, it's a real critical feature, because when you put that pipe through the bottom of the dam, you have a weakness where it's slick on the side of that pipe, and it's hard to pack the clay up around it, so you get a seepage that gradually, you know, wears out your dam. And so we put pond collars in. Now you can buy pond collars from from pond supply companies. We've done that, but more recently, in recent years, you just get a bag of Sackcrete down at Lowe's or Home Depot, and we just mix it, and just we put the pipe in and just cut a groove, a trough, okay, perpendicular, and then we just lay a hunk of concrete, Sackcrete in there, you know, yay big around that pipe, and you just put 3 of them in there. And that means that the water, when it comes down along that pipe, it has to squeeze out around the side, and it adds baffles, if you will. You know, it adds impermeable baffles and keeps your pond from seeping. So that's a real good technique, very easy to do, and it'll protect your dam from from being eroded over time. The spill pipe is right there. That's the spill pipe. So right now we've just had all this rain, so this thing is full, and that's the spill pipe right there, where, you know, if it does fill, then it goes down. That obviously is very simple. Because it goes through the dam high, it doesn't have the same pressure on it that the pipe that goes down underneath it has, to have the pond collars and all that stuff. So, you know, when you think about collecting water, remember that 1 acre-inch of water is 30,000 gallons, 1 acre-inch of water. So if you have 1 acre and you get 1 inch of runoff, that's 30,000 gallons of water.
Wow.
That's a lot of water.
That sure is a lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
Wow.
So people don't realize how fast, and unless somebody think that, you know, we're stealing water, people downstream can't get water. No. This is surface runoff. By definition, when you have surface runoff, it means the commons is full. The commons can't hold any more water. In other words, this isn't a stream. It's just a a valley catchment here that we've simply dammed up, so that when there's surface runoff in a flood or snow melt and the commons is full, we're simply holding that flood water as savings. That protects downstream people from flooding, and it offers water use throughout the year when there's not a flood. So it's a complete win-win situation, and you know, hydrating the landscape is one of the single biggest, you know, critical elements we've got to be dealing with right now. Is how do we hydrate the landscape? You know, some of the world's marshy, and hydration's not a problem, but most of the world is dry and getting drier. And so we need to really think about how to hydrate the landscape. So for us, you know, I love a pond because it creates a riparian area. The ducks and wildlife can come here and drink. and you get salamanders and frogs and toads and all sorts of this beautiful riparian environment. And I can walk up here any day and say, oh, I've got 500,000 gallons of water here.
Yeah.
When you most of the times when you think about water, everybody thinks a well, and we'll drill a well. But that's the commons. And if everybody drills a well and starts sucking out of it, pretty soon you don't have an aquifer anymore. That's what's happening all over the world, drying down the aquifers. So what we want is to not deplete the commons. We want, as a result of us being here, we want there to be more commons. More water, more soil, more breathable air, more social equity, you know, all those kinds of things. So again, we're back to the giving back. We're back to, as a result of our stepping here, there shouldn't be less, there should be more. That's the mandate.
And it's like you've created a natural rainwater catchment system here, as well as made it an invitation for wildlife to come. Right. And this maybe could be something used in drought areas like the West Coast.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, you know, if you drive out through, say, New Mexico, you know, go up through Albuquerque, Santa Fe, you know, dry. But every mile or so on the road, there's this big wide ditch, you know, like a water basin, you know, that goes under the road. Of course, people are driving their sand rails and you know, dirt bikes and all that stuff. And you ask your host or hostess, say, well, what is that? Well, you know, 4 or 5 days a year, those things run full with runoff from a rain event. And so the fact is that if we had taken all the money spent on at Los Alamos and invested it in permaculture style high ponds, today New Mexico would be an Eden.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah. So, you know, the tragedy of the human experience is not that we're lazy, because we're not lazy. We got full calendars, right? The tragedy of the human experience is that we're busy about the wrong things. And so here in the Shenandoah Valley, you know, for 200 years we've been plowing and planting corn and stuff that we you know, don't need much of, actually, to feed herbivores that aren't supposed to eat it at all. And we've been doing all that for all these centuries, all this time, when if we had taken that same effort and built ponds all over the ravines up in these mountains, today we'd be flood proof and drought proof and would have recreated Eden.
Wow. Sometimes we have to learn lessons the hard way.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. Yeah. So, you know, somebody will say, well, I don't have a you know, a hill or a high place, you know, behind my place. How do I get, you know, gravity pressure? Well, just remember that the golden thing to remember is that every vertical foot gives you 0.432 pounds of pressure. 0.432 pounds of pressure per vertical foot. Okay. So let's take this big oak tree right here. You know, you could go up there, goodness, 50 feet. If you went up there 50 feet at the top of that tree and pulled up a couple of IBC totes, you know, these 250-gallon totes, I'd pull them up empty, not full. Pull them up there empty, you know, 2 or 3 of them, put them up there on the top of that tree, and you could with a bicycle, you could pump a bicycle and pump water up there and fill it. Huh. And then you could get gravity flush. See, here's the thing. Real-time pressure, if you're using anything for real-time pressure except gravity, it's very expensive. There's a lot of latent energy used up in maintaining pressure for real time. The problem is, on our farms, we don't need water. We don't need dribble water. We need flush water. The animals come and drink it at one time, and we need a bunch of water all of a sudden. So to get the flow and to get the pressure in real time takes a tremendous amount of a coiled spring if we're using energy. But if we use gravity to get our flush flow at a point in time, if we use gravity, that doesn't cost anything. And that's why cities use water towers, right? Because it can dribble 24/7, and then when everybody comes home from work and takes their shower and flushes the toilet, boom, you know, you got water, and it dribbles in all overnight. And so if you had, for example, you know, a bicycle powered pump or a little solar pump or a little windmill pump, any kinds of little simple electric pump, any kind of simple little thing that would dribble water in, think about it, 1 gallon a minute, just 1 gallon a minute, which is like a pencil stream, 1 gallon a minute is 1,500 gallons a day.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So if you go 24/7 with a dribble, it adds up to a lot of water. So you pull your IBC totes up in the top of the tree, run a line up there, and into a float valve, and you can fill them as needed with any kind of low kind of tech thing you want to do. And now you've got gravity pressure. 50 times 0.432 is you know, almost 25 pounds of pressure that you've got now for when you suddenly turn that faucet on and I want a bunch of water here in a minute. You got your flow, and it's very, 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 very cheap.
Wow. So instead of spending that time at the gym on a recumbent bike or upright bike, you can set up on a little bike and actually provide water and get your exercise in at the same time.
Absolutely. Just, you know, I'm a believer. I tell school, you know, college. I do a lot of college speaking, and I tell them, hey, you want a greeny campus, you know, take all your exercise room, but build, what you want to do is build a living roof, you know, so take your roofs and put plants on them. All right, then you can shut down the air conditioning. Now you don't have an energy bill, and you create cisterns underground to take all the roof runoff, hook up all of your exercise equipment to pumps that are going to pump the water up, irrigate your rooftop, and you just cycle your water, and the students do the exercise and hit the plants. And when the cucumbers grow down around the dorm rooms, the students can just reach out and grab a cucumber or a squash or whatever,
that
you know,
sounds awesome.
and just graze through the campus as you go, right?
I love that. That's fantastic. That's a great idea. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, in a house, think about a house situation, how much energy is spent maintaining that pressure pump and all that latent. But if you could actually, you know, in 5-10 minutes a day on a bike, pump your water up to a cistern, you know, a 200 gallon or 250 gallon IBC tote up in the attic, all right, that would power your pressure water, your shower, your sink, everything, with no latent, no rheostats, no whatever, pressure tanks. None of all that expensive gingerbread. You just use gravity as your friend.
It can be totally off-grid water.
Yeah, totally off-grid water.
And one of the things that I've wrestled with homesteading on a slope, and I know some others do, is it can be challenging, but it can also be very beneficial to doing things like having a pond here, of running a farm or homestead on a slope.
Oh, listen, slope, look, there's no paradise this side of eternity. Everything's a trade-off. I mean, yeah, I get out into the Midwest, into Kansas, Nebraska, and I just salivate over, can you imagine having, you know, a mile of flat land, right? But then where's your gravity, you know? And so every place has its asset, its liability, its silver lining. And so, you know, we have terrain here, and so we use the terrain.
There you go.
And out there, you know, you can indeed pump water for 3 miles, you know. Here you can't, because it's, well, I mean, unless you start up high.
So it's about working and being a good steward with wherever you are and doing the best you can with it, and learning and looking at the systems in nature that you can mimic and work with.
Right, and instead of complaining that, oh, we can't do that here, well, you can't do everything every place, but you can do something.
That's right.
Every place.
There you go.
Now, do you ever put ducks on your pond to seal the bottom of the pond so it doesn't leak?
We've not used ducks, but we have used pigs very, very effectively. We call them squealer sealers. And it's kind of a new business, you know. You provide the corn, we provide the pigs, and we'll come and seal your pond. We've actually sealed up a couple ponds. We have one here that we really sealed up nicely. It wouldn't hold 8 inches of water. It had a big shale seam in the bottom of it. And we put pigs in there for 2 weeks, just laid corn all over the pond, put pigs in there, and it's never leaked a drop since. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do with, I mean, pigs can make sand hold water.
Wow.
I mean, they just get in there. Man, they're like a plasterer, you know. I mean, that's where they are.
Now, do you think it could be done with ducks here in a system like this? Would the water still be?
You know, I'm not familiar with ducks doing it, but I can imagine that they would be a big help. I just don't know if they're heavy enough.
Okay.
To to do that, but
Okay.
maybe you have more experience. I don't know.
Well, I've only heard about it from Jeff Lawton, from watching some of his stuff, how he said if you put ducks on a pond that's leaking, their poop will seal the bottom of it. So I just wondered.
But also from a sanitary purpose, raising pigs or ducks wouldn't be a problem with pumping the water down. You wouldn't.
Well, I wouldn't want to use the water when the animals were sealing the pond.
Yeah.
That would not be a good thing.
Okay,
So you
okay.
gotta have some redundancy.
Okay.
We've got one pond up here that leaks still a little bit, and we'd like to go more with that, but we've had to develop water up higher to get redundancy, so we can not have to use that water, you know.
But with the rotational system, even with the pond,
Yeah.
it would work.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Next, Joel took us up the mountain even more. And I can't say that it got any smoother, but once we got to where we were going, it was well worth it, because he took us to the clearest, cleanest pond, natural body of water outside that I had ever seen. I wish we would have gotten more footage of it, but this water was absolutely beautiful. And the green tint that it has is actually from the minerals in it. But this water is amazing.
Isn't that pretty?
It is very beautiful.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Like a waterfall.
See how clear it is?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's about 14 feet down into the bottom there.
Wow.
How does it turn that color?
Just mineral. Yeah, I mean, you can drink that.
Wow. Beautiful.
But see, if you don't, the point is that water is all just going to go down and be flood problems.
Yeah.
But by holding it here,
Yeah.
you can actually, you know, get use out of it. I mean, P.A. Yeomans, the Australian who developed the keyline system and wrote the book in 1951 or 2, Water for Every Farm, said every farmer should aspire to 2 things. He was in Australia, so it was very dry. He said every farmer should aspire to 2 things. Number 1, eliminate surface runoff, and number 2, never end a drought with a full pond. So have a system, have a mechanism where you can trap flood water, but then that you can use it
Yeah.
when
Whenever
it's
you-
dry. Yeah.
And some bud in there. Some bud.
Yeah, well, bugs are-
Yeah, there are bugs in there. Yeah, there are bugs. There are.
I don't think I've ever seen water this clear.
Out in nature.
You have a house like a tree somewhere and you live here by yourself.
Several 6 inches instead of a one great big pipe is that you can get the water level higher.
Ah.
See, if you use a big pipe, then your water's going to stop wherever the bottom of that pipe is. If you use a 12-inch, you've just lost 6 inches of water, which is the biggest volume of water because the saucer, the bowl gets bigger and bigger. So by using several small pipes, we're able to get the water level higher.
And after being in awe and amazement for a few minutes of looking at the beautiful water, next Joel took us up the mountain a little bit more, close to the top, where it had a spectacular view.
Yeah, I need to get up here with a chainsaw and open up. We're getting some growth back, but that's the farm right down there. That's where we were.
Wow.
And see, there's that's the road we drove up right through that field right down there. That's that's the road. The broilers are right past those trees. You just can't see them. They're right past those trees on that.
Wow.
That's Daniel's house right there. Barn right there. Our house is over here.
And looking around, it made me think, if the trees weren't here, how much more would we be able to see here? And Joel explained how this area on the mountain wasn't always wooded.
These were balls. These were called balls, and the Native Americans used fire to keep the forest down on these balls, because this is where the bison wanted to come in the summer. When it was hot, it was cool up here, and so the bison would move up here, and it kept them around.
Wow. Now were these the big bison? Because I did hear that there were some smaller bison in this area at some point.
I don't know. I wouldn't hear.
Yeah.
But you know, there were elk. There were elk and deer, and of course turkey and pheasants and lots of stuff here. Here it gets about 6 or 7 inches more rain a year than down at the house.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, when you look up and you fall, you know, Smoky Mountains, and often it'll be sprinkling up here, raining, and it's dry down.
Check out the soil here, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. A lot different than the clay we had.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Next, we traveled back down the mountain just a little ways to where Joel brought us to a place where we could actually taste this amazing water.
All right. Now, yeah, you can drink this water.
It's been naturally filtered.
Huh?
It's been naturally filtered.
Yeah, yeah. This is good water. I like to drink out of these things right here. Yeah, that water has taste. Doesn't that water? It tastes like food, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's really cool.
I gotta try some of that. Hold
Oh,
on.
I mean, there's nothing. There's
It's
nothing.
nice and cold too.
Yeah, it's cold. Yeah.
Come over there. Hold on.
Yeah, just go over there and just jump right on into it.
Oh, Micah.
That is good. It's the best water I've ever had.
It is.
That is great.
It is. I mean, it's so wonderful water.
I don't know if it'll work like that. You have to try.
Get out there like I did,
Stick your
man.
face in it, Micah.
Get down there and just short. There you go. Yeah.
Get it?
I like it.
So this was a spring. This was a spring right up here on the mountain. And so what we did, literally with a pick and shovel, I just dug a trench right here, a trench down,
Whoa, that's deep.
and there's 3, and just use this piece of metal roofing. That's my dam. That's it. And there's 3 holes in it. There's 2 holes up here to handle the excess, but down here, all right. I'm gonna make it muddy here a little bit. So get what you're gonna get. And then there's another hole, a 1 inch, down in the bottom, and then this is just a spur of pipe with little 1/8 inch holes drilled in it as a strainer.
Okay.
And so all you got to do is get the water above, enough to get above an intake, and so the water then can go into that pipe, and that pipe comes out the bottom. It's down here.
Okay.
That's the pipe coming out of the bottom. Then these 2 here are for overflow.
Okay.
Okay. But all I did was I just dig a trench, stuck this down in, push clay up around the front, stack rocks up around the back, and you have a diaphragm that gives you enough water to get into a pipe.
Wow. And even with harvesting what you're harvesting from this runoff, you're still letting some of it naturally go.
Oh, we're not harvesting 10%. We're not even harvesting 10%.
That's neat. That's so good.
But a lot of people don't realize how, with a pick and shovel and a little piece of metal and a couple of these are called bulkhead fittings.
Okay.
Bulkhead fittings. That's all this is. I mean, it's what, $30, $40, and a couple hours of picking and shoveling, and because listen, if you can get water in a pipe, you've got something. Until you get water in a pipe, you don't have any control.
No.
But once you get water in a pipe, now you've got control. You can take it anywhere you want to.
And you can get all these supplies at your local hardware store.
Absolutely. There's nothing here. This is all just off the shelf, regular stuff. Yep. So I come up about every 2 weeks and just kind of clean off that. Sorry.
Oh, you okay?
and just kind of clean off that intake pipe and make sure these are unplugged. Yep, you can see they were they were plugged up a little bit. And that's it.
Wow, that's neat.
And it just runs year-round water. Very, very simple.
That's so neat.
So you can do this. You don't need a backhoe. You don't need machinery. Just a little bit of ingenuity, and you're up and running.
Now, did you learn all this from anybody, or just through trial and error on your own?
Through trial and error. Now, the one thing I will tell you, when you're dealing with this, of course, you know, the water starts down through here in this pipe. Well, there's not very much pressure. I mean, see, most people are used to starting with pressure and losing pressure through the system. We're starting with no pressure and gaining pressure. Okay, that's totally inverted what most people are thinking. So the problem with starting with low pressure is that you have vapor lock. If you get a bubble here, there's not enough pressure. You know, at 1 or 2 pounds of pressure, there's not enough pressure to push out an air bubble.
Yeah.
So down there, about 50 yards, there's a T with a valve that I can bleed this.
Okay.
And if I bleed this, there's about 10 feet of drop, which, you know, is almost 5 pounds of pressure.
Okay.
If I can bleed this to that level, then it's got enough pressure to push it out the rest of the way.
Wow.
So that's kind of a strategic thing to remember. You got to go down about 10 feet of fall, put in a bleed, and that gives you a place to bleed out any air pockets.
Okay.
if you have it.
And not only was this water super clear, it was clean and it tasted amazing. Man, I really enjoyed that water. I wish we were able to bottle it up and bring some of it back with us because it was that good. And I really enjoyed spending time with Joel and him going over this system here with us and how he's able to gravity feed water throughout his farm. And you know what, guys? This could be a solution to drought-stricken areas with a system like this. And it could even be a solution for areas that have too much water, that get flooded, of distributing that water differently to prevent landslides and things like that. Just something to think about. Well, this was just another portion of a day that we had with Joel Salatin from sun up to sundown. We actually have more videos, so make sure you stay tuned for that as well. See you next time.